We bring you the latest updates from the Pna Newsroom. Former Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez is no longer a part of the Marcos cabinet. This is confirmed by Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, who also denied the existence of Administrative Order No. 1 designating Rodriguez as the Presidential Chief of Staff. Rodriguez, who resigned as Executive Secretary last month, said he wants to give more time to his family as his work demands a sense of urgency, which requires more time to almost all of public servants. Meanwhile, Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles confirmed her resignation today, citing health concerns. Senior Deputy Executive Secretary Hubert Guevara said there is no decision yet as to who Cruz Angeles' replacement will be. Angeles served the office of the Press Secretary for 96 days. Meanwhile, Commission on Audit Chair Jose Calida has also resigned from his post. Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin confirmed the news, saying they will leave it to Calida to speak about the matter. Calida, who was reportedly on medical leave, was not reappointed by President Marcos. The Philippines ranked first on the list of global disaster risk hotspots based on the latest World Risks Index report. The country is also identified as one of the countries vulnerable to disasters due to extreme natural events, including earthquakes, storms, or flooding. The country got a score of 46.82 in terms of exposure and vulnerability to natural hazards compared to last year's score of 21.39, placing the country at the 9th spot. Second in rank is India, followed by Indonesia, Colombia, Mexico, Myanmar, Mozambique, China, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Meanwhile, the United Nations is calling on all countries to prioritize climate action. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres made the call as government representatives begin finalizing the agenda for the 27th session of the Conference of Parties, or COP27, next month. Guterres said that people are now living in a life or death struggle for survival, and there is no time for pointing fingers as the world can't wait, and emissions are at an all-time high and continue to rise. He mentioned the various devastating effects of climate change, such as the flooding in Pakistan, the hottest summer in Europe in 500 years, the blackout in the whole of Cuba, Hurricane Ian in the United States, and the hammering of super typhoons in the Philippines, among others. He said these show that no country and no economy is immune from the climate crisis. Earlier, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has already called for a review of the government's disaster response to streamline the processes of multiple agencies. A lawmaker has called on employers to implement flexible working arrangements provided for by the law. Rizal 4th District Representative Fidel Nograles, chair of the House Committee on Labor and Employment, urged employers to follow the expanded rules of Republic Act No. 11165, or the Telecommuting Act of 2018. He said providing employees with the opportunity to spend more time with their families without hampering productivity will benefit all sides. The Department of Labor and Employment released the revised implementing rules and regulations of the telecommuting law last September 16. Under the revised IRR, workers in an alternative setup must be treated with the same workload, compensation, and benefits as workers in the regular workplace. Nograles said the release of the revised IRR is timely amid the steady rise in the cost of goods and problems in public transport. The leaders of Congress have signed the bills for the postponement of the December 2022 Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections, as well as the mandatory SIM card registration. House Speaker Martin Romualdez and Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri led the ceremonial signing of the enrolled bills this morning. The enrolled bills were then turned over to Presidential Legislative Liaison Office Secretary Mark Leandro Mendoza, who would submit the measures to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. for signing. Under the 1987 Constitution, Marcos will then have 30 days to either approve or veto a bill or let it lapse into law. Romualdez' office said the two measures were the first enrolled bills accomplished under the first regular session of the 19th Congress. And in other news, Russia's space agency is discussing with Moscow about continuing its participation in the International Space Station past 2024. Sergei Krikalev, head of the Russia's human space flight program, said Roscosmos is hoping to have permission to continue working with the ISS next year. Roscosmos chief Yuri Borisov earlier announced that Russia would leave the ISS after 2024 and build its own space station after Russia's ties with the West soured over the war in Ukraine. ISS partner countries consisting of the United States, Russia, Europe, Canada, and Japan committed to operate the orbiting laboratory until 2024. Meanwhile, the U.S. National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, said it would try to launch its Moon Mega rocket in November. The U.S. Space Agency said it was preparing its next launch window for between November 12 and November 27. The Artemis 1 mission was delayed several times now, the latest hindrance being the recent onslaught of Hurricane Ian in Florida. And that is the latest and the biggest stories from the Pna Newsroom. For more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. We are also shown on the social media pages of the Office of the Press Secretary and on Radio Pilipinas RP1. Stay tuned for more updates. I am William Theo. We tell stories that inspire change.